Greetings, dear listeners. How are you feeling today? And from which corner of the world are you joining us? In today's video, we will explore the mystery of why some souls cannot return to reincarnation. Did you know that there are souls destined never to return again? The secret of forbidden reincarnation is hidden within ancient scrolls and whispered only among the wise. What if your soul has already reached its final step, never again allowed to walk the cycle of earthly return? Allow me to guide you into the beginning of this mystery and reveal what it unfolds for each of us. Between life and death lies a thin line, invisible to the ordinary eye, yet evident to those who dare to look beyond the surface of existence. This boundary has no shape or color. It is sensed as the breath of silence, where everything familiar ceases to serve as support. For centuries, humanity has sought to understand its nature, believing that after death always comes a new life, another chance to complete the unfinished. Yet, in ancient texts, written by forgotten sages, a more troubling knowledge is hidden. There it is said that some souls do not return. Their journey does not continue in the familiar circle of reincarnations. Instead, they dissolve beyond the visible fabric of being. This phenomenon was called the mystery of the eternal path, because it challenged the very notion of endless life. Imagine a river flowing for centuries, nourishing its shores and shaping new lands. But one day, it disappears into the depths of the earth, vanishing into dark caverns, never to return to the light. So it is with certain souls. Some come back again and again, while others vanish into realms where human imagination dares not linger. The wise claimed that such souls had exhausted their earthly potential. They had lived through all lessons, untangled all knots of fate, and no longer required new embodiment. But the question remained, where do they go? No definitive answers were given, only symbols and hints scattered through myths of eternal gardens, celestial silences, and halls of stillness. This enigma has fueled human imagination for ages. Some saw it as a frightening sentence, the end of return. Others perceived it as liberation from the endless cycle. Perhaps both interpretations hold fragments of truth, for the eternal path has always been tied to an inner choice, to fear disappearance or to trust in a new form of being. Today, when we compare esoteric teachings with modern science, especially physics and psychology, we begin to see that consciousness is not merely a function of the brain. It is like a field, connecting us to something greater. And if some fields keep vibrating and returning, others reach a point of stillness, dissolving into a dimension where return is no longer needed. The enigma of the eternal path remains both a challenge and an invitation. For in contemplating the souls that never return, we learn to see our own lives differently. Every moment, every choice acquires deeper meaning. Perhaps this is the beginning of true understanding, that the eternal path starts here, within us. Across the hidden corridors of history, sages wrote about strange marks that appeared upon those who reached the final stage of earthly existence. These were not physical scars or visible symbols, but subtle impressions etched upon the field of consciousness itself. Ancient manuscripts, preserved in fragile parchment and whispered lineages, described them as luminous patterns surrounding a person, faint to the eye, yet unmistakable to the sensitive heart. Such signs, it was said, revealed themselves as an enduring sense of completion, a quiet awareness that nothing essential remained undone. Those who carried this inner imprint often walked through life with a gentle calm, as though they were visitors in a place they had already known too well. While others chased endless desires and attachments, they appeared strangely free from grasping, their presence tinged with a kind of serene inevitability. Mystics across cultures spoke of these individuals in hushed tones. In India, they were likened to beings whose karmic threads had nearly dissolved, their lives woven with minimal entanglement. In Tibetan monasteries, Secret scrolls guarded by advanced adepts described the aura of such people as a faint glow, a subtle vibration that separated them from the rest. In ancient Greek schools of mystery, they were said to carry the seal of the boundary, an invisible signature announcing the approach of their final incarnation. The signs were not dramatic, nor did they invite recognition from the untrained eye. More often, they revealed themselves through the quiet texture of daily existence. A person on this threshold might feel an unshakable sense of having already lived through the essential dramas of human life. They could carry the memory of struggles long resolved, embodying lessons without needing to reenact them. Their laughter, their silence, even their smallest gestures contained echoes of something timeless, as if a deeper rhythm guided their every step. To those nearby, such individuals could seem simultaneously ordinary and extraordinary. They worked, ate, and rested like everyone else, yet there was an unmistakable undertone to their being, a soft weight of presence. For some, this was unsettling, to stand near someone who seemed already half beyond the world. For others, it was deeply comforting, like encountering a lighthouse that reassured weary travelers of the shore ahead. What makes these signs so enigmatic is their invisibility to conventional measures. Science cannot weigh them, nor can logic dissect them. They belong to the language of archetypes, inner images that act as guides through hidden landscapes of the soul. To notice them requires a different kind of attention, the ability to perceive silence within sound, stillness within movement, and meaning woven into the very fabric of being. Those who carried the signs of the last threshold did not always speak of them, for such knowledge could not be reduced to words. Instead, their lives themselves became the testimony, a living manuscript inscribed upon the world, reminding all who noticed that the journey of the soul has an end, and that some paths lead not back to the beginning, but forward into the unknown. Beyond the surface of visible reality, traditions speak of mysterious gates that govern the movement of souls. These gates were never made of stone or metal, but of pure resonance, subtle currents shaping the direction of consciousness. Some remained open, allowing countless passages back into earthly life, welcoming the flow of experience again and again. Others, however, slowly closed, signaling that a soul had reached the boundary of its earthly journey. Shamans across continents described these gateways in visions and ceremonies. They saw radiant thresholds that shimmered in hues reflecting the destiny of those who approached. For some, the gates glowed with gentle gold, suggesting a return into a body, another chance to weave new lessons. For others, the light dimmed into silver, or deep indigo, marking the end of repetition. Once crossed, these souls would not return to the familiar landscapes of earth, but would dissolve into realms beyond comprehension. The imagery of gates was not a mere metaphor. It was an attempt to give form to an experience beyond language. Just as a river meets the ocean and ceases to be the same, so too does the soul, upon passing such a threshold, lose its familiar contours. It merges into a vaster dimension where time and memory dissolve, where individuality transforms into something wider than personality. Ancient accounts suggest that these gates did not appear randomly. They emerged when the cycles of growth and trial were complete, when all threads of unfinished karma had been woven to their conclusion. The passage was not earned like a prize, nor avoided like a punishment. It was a natural outcome, the way ripe fruit falls from the branch once the season is fulfilled. To approach the gates was to experience a profound stillness. The soul would no longer be drawn by the push and pull of earthly desires. Instead, there arose a quiet clarity, a sense of alignment with something vast and unspoken. Those who sensed themselves nearing this threshold often described dreams of light, vast landscapes of silence, or visions of doorways opening into infinity. The gates of no return challenged the very assumption of eternal repetition. If reincarnation was the cycle of the seasons, then these gates were the eternal winter, not a death, but a transformation into a different order of existence. To those left behind, the mystery could appear as loss. Yet to the one who passed, it was the release of all burdens, a homecoming into a space where beginnings and endings no longer mattered. The gates stand not as threats, but as symbols of completion. They remind us that life is not only about return, but also about transcendence. To live with awareness of these thresholds is to recognize that every moment holds weight, and that the path we walk may one day lead us not back again, but forward into the great silence that waits beyond. In the secret teachings of many traditions, there is mention of unseen presences that watch over the passage of souls. They are not gods in the mythological sense, nor angels bound to a single doctrine. Instead, they are described as guardians of the threshold, witnesses of the eternal law, silent observers who ensure that each journey follows its rightful course. These beings were said to exist beyond the fabric of physical space. They do not appear in visible form, nor can they be summoned by ritual alone. Instead, their presence is felt like a subtle shift in the air, a vibration that whispers through dreams or moments of profound silence. They are not there to judge in human terms. They do not measure good or evil, success or failure. Their gaze is fixed upon the essence of the soul, upon the patterns that consciousness has woven through countless lifetimes. Mystics claimed that these guardians held keys, not literal, but energetic, vibrations that either opened or closed the gates of reincarnation. Some described them as beings of light, radiant yet impersonal, their forms too fluid to be confined to shape. Others saw them as shadows against the cosmos, vast and incomprehensible, more like forces of balance than individuals. However they were envisioned, their function remained the same: to guard the integrity of the great cycle, allowing no soul to pass before its time, and no soul to linger when its lessons were done. The guardians perceive what humans cannot. They see the soul not as a story, but as a map of frequencies, every choice and every experience forming threads of resonance. Where we see moments of triumph or failure, they perceive only harmonies and dissonances, and when the song of a soul has reached completion, they know, with unerring clarity, that the cycle of return has ended. To encounter such a presence was said to be both terrifying and profoundly reassuring. Terrifying, because in their gaze there is no place for illusion. All masks fall away. Reassuring, because they reveal that the journey has always been guided, that nothing has ever been random or wasted. For those who sensed the guardians near, it was like standing before a mirror that reflected not the body, nor the personality, but the timeless core of being. Legends say that without the guardians, the order of reincarnation would collapse into chaos. Souls might wander endlessly, unable to find their path. But with their silent watch, the process remains whole, each transition occurring with precision. They are not rulers, nor masters, but custodians of balance, guardians who serve not by will, but by necessity of the universal law. The invisible guardians remind us that life is not left to chance. Behind the seeming disorder of existence, there is a structure, a sacred symmetry that ensures that every step, whether forward or final, unfolds exactly as it must. Across the boundary between ancient wisdom and modern science lies a striking convergence, the recognition that consciousness is not random, but energetic in its very nature. For centuries, mystics described the soul as a field of subtle forces, weaving itself into the fabric of life. Today, physicists speak of energy fields, resonances, and quantum interactions that shape matter at its smallest scale. Though their languages differ, both point toward the same truth. Every being is an orchestration of energy, moving through patterns of harmony and imbalance. Each soul, according to esoteric teachings, carries a unique energetic configuration, much like a fingerprint made of light. This configuration shifts with every thought, action, and intention. When kindness is expressed, the field brightens. When fear dominates, it contracts. These fluctuations are not moral in the human sense, but are instead expressions of resonance. Like the strings of an instrument, the soul vibrates with clarity or discord depending on the life it leads. The cycle of reincarnation, then, can be seen as a process of balancing these energies. When imbalances persist, when unresolved lessons echo through the field, the soul is drawn back into embodiment, pulled once more into the theater of human life. Each return is not punishment, but an opportunity, another chance to refine the resonance, to align with deeper harmony. Yet there comes a time when balance is achieved. Mystics describe this state as the still flame, a point where the oscillations cease and the soul rests in perfect equilibrium. It is not achieved through avoidance of struggle, but through the full embrace of experience, the integration of both shadow and light. Once balance has been reached, the necessity for return dissolves. The soul no longer seeks another body, another stage, for it has completed its composition. Modern analogies can help us glimpse this mystery. In physics, a system at equilibrium no longer exchanges energy with its surroundings. It has reached a state of rest. Likewise, a balanced soul no longer generates the karmic ripples that bind it to the cycles of life and death. The return to incarnation is no longer required, because nothing remains unfinished. For those who have touched this balance, life itself becomes different. They may live quietly, without grand displays, yet their presence carries a depth that resonates far beyond words. It is as though their very being radiates a silent completion, an echo of harmony that influences all who encounter them. The laws of energetic balance reveal a profound truth. Liberation is not a gift bestowed by external forces, but the natural unfolding of inner alignment. When the soul rests in balance, it transcends the pull of return. It steps beyond the circle, not as escape, but as fulfillment of its deepest design. Most souls return to life not because of fate's cruelty, but because of what remains unresolved within them. The great teachings describe existence as a school, and each incarnation as a classroom where specific lessons must be lived, not merely understood in thought. A soul does not advance through theories or borrowed knowledge. It grows only by direct experience, by walking through the fire of joy and suffering, choice and consequence. Unfinished lessons often reveal themselves in patterns that repeat across lifetimes. A soul that once misused power may find itself reborn in circumstances where humility is demanded. Another that fled from love may return again and again until the barriers around the heart dissolve. These repetitions are not punishment, but mirrors, reflections offered until the soul can finally see itself clearly. The records of mystics describe these lessons as threads woven into the fabric of the soul. Each thread carries memory, not the memory of names or faces, but of impressions, emotions, and the deep imprints of choices. When too many threads remain tangled, the weave is incomplete, and the soul must return to continue the work. To live again is to re-enter the loom of existence, where new experiences stretch and align the fibers of being. Even in a single lifetime, we can sense these echoes. How often do we find ourselves in situations that feel strangely familiar, as if rehearsed before? How often do we encounter the same kind of challenge, no matter how far we travel or how hard we try to avoid it? These are signs of unfinished lessons, drawing us into the very experiences we might resist the most. Yet, completion is always possible. When a lesson is truly integrated, it no longer demands repetition. Forgiveness may free an old wound that once chained the heart. Compassion may dissolve bitterness that has lingered for ages. Courage may replace fear, and in that moment, the karmic thread is untangled. The soul carries the wisdom forward, no longer compelled to return to the same stage. Mystics describe the culmination of these lessons as a transformation of identity. The soul is no longer bound by the narrow roles it once played. It recognizes itself as something larger than victim or victor, sinner or saint. It becomes a participant in the wider harmony, contributing not out of obligation, but out of alignment with truth. Unfinished lessons remind us of the dignity of our struggles. They reveal that even the most painful cycles hold purpose. Each return is not condemnation, but invitation, another chance to grow, another chance to awaken. And when the lessons are finally lived, fully and deeply, the cycle loosens its grip, and the soul stands ready to step into a freedom beyond return. Souls that complete the cycle of reincarnation do not vanish into nothingness. Instead, they pass into a state so profound and subtle that human language falters to describe it. The ancients called it the Great Silence, a realm where the rhythm of time no longer beats, where space itself loses its boundaries. In this silence, consciousness does not end. It expands, dissolving the walls of individuality and entering into a vastness that feels both infinite and intimate. Mystical traditions across the globe attempted to capture glimpses of this condition. In the East, it was spoken of as the luminous void, empty yet full, a stillness vibrating with creative potential. In the desert writings of the Middle East, sages hinted at a resting place of souls, a hall of quiet radiance where beings awaited no further summons. Christian mystics described it as a union with the eternal, where words like before and after ceased to hold meaning. Though the descriptions vary, all point toward the same essence, a silence that is not absence, but presence in its purest form. To imagine this state, one might consider the pause between heartbeats. In that fraction of stillness, life is suspended, yet fully alive. Or think of the moment just before dawn, when the world is wrapped in darkness, but the first threads of light are about to appear. The silence between worlds is like that pause, not empty, but brimming with possibility, a threshold where the soul is neither bound nor returning. Those who enter this silence are no longer compelled by desire or fear. They are not striving for future incarnations, nor clinging to past identities. Instead, they rest in a balance so complete that striving itself becomes irrelevant. Mystics who touched this silence in moments of deep meditation reported a sense of dissolving into the cosmos, as though the self had become indistinguishable from the vastness of being. For those still within the cycle, the idea of such stillness can feel unsettling. The human mind is accustomed to movement, to stories, to beginnings and endings. To imagine a dimension without them is to confront the limits of comprehension. Yet, the silence between worlds is not annihilation. It is fulfillment, the flowering of all lessons into a single presence, the arrival into a state where nothing more must be sought. This silence serves as both conclusion and seed. It marks the end of reincarnation, but also the beginning of something beyond. The soul that rests there is no longer a traveler bound to earth. It has become part of the ocean from which all life arises. And though we cannot fully know this silence while embodied, its whisper surrounds us, reminding us that beyond every cycle, there is rest, and in that rest, the essence of eternity. One of the greatest paradoxes within the mystery of reincarnation is that the end of the cycle does not arrive through a deliberate decision. No soul sits before a cosmic council and declares, "I will not return again." Instead, the cessation of return unfolds naturally, like the ripening of fruit or the falling of leaves in autumn. It is a choice beyond choice. not made by the personality or even the conscious soul, but by the higher essence that governs the rhythm of existence itself. This higher essence, often called the higher self, exists beyond the grasp of memory or desire. It is not the collection of traits, opinions, or stories that we associate with identity. Rather, it is the deep current of being that has guided every lifetime, silently shaping the arc of evolution. When this essence recognizes that the cycle of learning is complete, the gates close gently. The soul does not resist, for resistance belongs only to the ego. What remains is acceptance, a seamless transition into what lies beyond. Mystics often use the image of a butterfly leaving its cocoon to describe this process. The caterpillar does not debate whether it is time to transform. The change simply comes. The cocoon splits open, and what once crawled upon the earth takes flight into another dimension of existence. So too does the soul move beyond reincarnation. The choice is not an act of will, but the natural unfolding of what was always destined to happen. To those still bound within the cycles, this idea can feel both liberating and unsettling. We are accustomed to believing that progress depends upon effort, intention, and deliberate striving. Yet here, the deepest transformation comes not from striving, but from completion. When all lessons are integrated, when nothing more remains unresolved, the higher self recognizes the fullness of the journey and releases the need for return. This recognition is not dramatic. It does not arrive with fanfare or cosmic announcement. Instead, it manifests quietly, like the stillness that settles after a storm, or the hush of twilight after a long day. The personality may not even realize that it is living the final incarnation. What matters is that the inner resonance has reached harmony, and the pull toward return has faded into silence. The choice beyond choice reminds us of the mystery of surrender. Life is not always about control, but about trust in a larger rhythm. Just as rivers flow to the sea without knowing the destination, so too does the soul find its way beyond return. In that surrender lies not loss of freedom, but its highest form, the freedom to become one with the vastness from which all existence springs. When a soul approaches its final incarnation, its presence in the world begins to carry a subtle distinction. Outwardly, these lives may appear ordinary: a farmer tending fields, a teacher guiding children, a healer working quietly in the shadows. Yet beneath the surface, something extraordinary radiates, an invisible trace left by a consciousness no longer bound by the usual cycles of desire and attachment. These traces are not measured in monuments, fame, or the weight of achievements. Instead, they appear in the quiet influence such individuals exert upon those around them. A single conversation may alter the course of another's life. A small act of kindness may ripple outward for generations. Their contribution is not in spectacle, but in resonance, a frequency that subtly reshapes the collective field of humanity. Mystics observed that these souls seemed to dissolve into life rather than impose themselves upon it. They carried no need to dominate, to leave their names etched in stone, or to create legacies through force. Instead, they became like wind through trees, unseen yet unmistakable, leaving behind a stirring in the leaves that continued long after they had passed. Their very ordinariness was part of the mystery, for through it the extraordinary worked silently, unseen by the majority. To those attuned, however, their presence was unmistakable. People often described feeling a sense of calm in their company, as if the weight of their own burdens suddenly grew lighter. Others spoke of inspiration arising spontaneously, as though the soul in its final turn served as a catalyst, awakening the dormant light in others. These impressions were not deliberate efforts, but natural expressions of a being no longer entangled in karmic debt. In many traditions, It was said that the lives of these souls served as living bridges between the manifest and the unmanifest. Though they still moved through the world of forms, their essence already touched the silence beyond. This dual existence left behind impressions that could not be erased, a fragrance of spirit that lingered long after their departure. The traces of the unmanifest are reminders that not all influence is visible. Some of the most profound changes in history and in hearts have come not from leaders or warriors, but from quiet presences who walked softly, carrying wisdom without speaking it. Their lives teach that significance is not always measured by scale, but by depth, by the ability to touch eternity through the smallest of gestures. Such souls do not announce that they are living their last return. They simply embody it, becoming mirrors of completion, whispering without words that the journey is near its end. And in those traces, we are reminded that even when form dissolves, essence remains, shaping the world in ways beyond measure. The mystery of forbidden reincarnation does not rest solely in hidden scrolls or distant teachings. Its truth lies closer, waiting within the quiet chambers of our own awareness. The soul's liberation is not unlocked by temples or rituals alone, but by a key that has always been inside us, the key of consciousness itself. Every moment of awareness is an opening. When we notice the breath entering and leaving, when we feel the stillness beneath the noise of daily life, we are already turning that key. The path toward transcendence is not about escaping the world, but about seeing it clearly, without distortion. Each act of honesty, each recognition of truth, polishes the key, preparing the soul for its passage beyond return. Ancient teachers described this key as awakening. Awakening does not mean acquiring endless knowledge or achieving feats of power. It means realizing that life itself is sacred, that every experience is both teacher and mirror. When we live with that recognition, reincarnation no longer feels like a cycle of imprisonment, but like a school where each lesson brings us closer to completion. And when the lessons are finished, the door within opens, effortlessly. The liberation that follows is not an escape from responsibility, but the fulfillment of it. A soul that discovers the key within does not abandon the world in indifference. It embraces the world with clarity, knowing that nothing more needs to be grasped or avoided. This perspective transforms the way one lives. Every word spoken carries greater weight. Every gesture becomes more deliberate, more aligned with the harmony that guides existence. The key within us also dismantles fear. Fear of death, fear of ending, fear of losing identity. These dissolve when we realize that consciousness is not extinguished, only transformed. Just as water changes form when it turns to vapor, so too does the soul change form when it passes beyond reincarnation. It is not lost. It simply enters a wider horizon. Ultimately, the mystery of souls that do not return is not a riddle meant to frighten. It is a reminder of the depth and significance of every life we live now. The cycle of reincarnation is not endless for its own sake. It is purposeful, guiding us until we are ready to step beyond it. The key has always been in our hands, waiting for the courage to use it. To hold that key is to recognize that life is more than preparation for another life. It is itself the threshold, the sacred moment where eternity touches time. And when that recognition deepens, the soul stands at last before the inner door, turning it gently, stepping into the silence where return is no longer needed. As our journey through these 10 chapters comes to a close, we return to the central mystery: why some souls cannot and will not return to the cycle of reincarnation. What began as a whisper in ancient manuscripts has unfolded into a vision of completion, of thresholds crossed, lessons lived, and silence embraced. We have seen how the soul carries signs of its final journey, how invisible guardians guide its steps, how energetic balance unfolds into stillness, and how unfinished lessons weave their patterns until they are resolved. The truth revealed is not of punishment nor reward, but of natural law. Just as rivers flow into the sea and stars eventually fade into the dark, so too does the soul follow its inherent rhythm. When the cycles are complete, there is no need for return. The gates close softly, and the spirit enters the silence that is fuller than sound, the vastness that is richer than form. This understanding is not meant to distance us from life, but to deepen our presence within it. Knowing that each incarnation may be part of a limited journey reminds us of the sacredness of every breath, every gesture, every connection. To live with awareness is to honor the possibility that our time here carries unique meaning, not to be repeated endlessly. Perhaps the greatest lesson is that the key to transcendence does not lie outside. It has always rested within, waiting for recognition. Each act of kindness, each moment of clarity, each quiet acceptance of truth polishes that key, guiding the soul toward its ultimate freedom. When the inner door opens, return is no longer necessary, for the journey has reached its natural conclusion. And so, dear listener, as we step away from this exploration, may you carry with you not only the echoes of ancient wisdom, but also the resonance of your own inner voice. May you sense the guardians that watch silently, the balance that awaits within, and the silence that whispers beyond all cycles.